Translator, Dark Angel, Editor Kurisu. Within these few days, Ling Han and the two girls also achieved their own breakthroughs. Liu Yu Tong had accumulated energy for a long time, plus she also had the 3 yin vanishing veins which, together with the 3 yin mysterious arts, allowed her to maintain an overwhelmingly rapid cultivation pace. Moreover, she also had in her hands the 4 transformations pill, so naturally her cultivation speed was even faster than before. Most importantly, the 4 transformations pill would help her break through to the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier. For most people, the barrier between cultivation levels was the hardest to pass. As long as you were willing to put in real effort, or had enough alchemical pills to support your cultivation, you would be able to smoothly cultivate from the early period of any layer all the way to the peak period. But to successfully break through, that was another problem. Even if it was only from the 1st layer of gushing spring tier to the 2nd, this one step forward was extremely difficult to take. Why were there so few spiritual pedestal tier warriors in Rain Country? That was simple. They did not have enough comprehension of their cultivation levels and were all stuck in spiritual ocean tier. And below spiritual ocean tier, there was also a large number of people who were stuck in gushing spring tier and element gathering tier. The 4 transformations pill could help a martial artist gain the comprehension of his cultivation level. If this spread out, it would be a hair-raising shock to anyone who found out. Liu Yu Tong was intelligent in the first place. Plus, she had already been at the peak period of the 1st layer of gushing spring tier. Now that she had the aid of the 4 transformations pill, after a few days trying to break through, everything naturally went smoothly and she advanced to the next level. She did not continue to raise her cultivation level. Instead, she put effort into strengthening her foundation. After all, she managed to reach her cultivation level with the help of medicine. So if she was too greedy and continued to advance, it would lead to her foundation being unstable. In the future, this would mean that she would be unable to reach a higher cultivation level. Ling Han also taught her the 4 seasons sword technique, which was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Chances were high that not even the Liu clan had this kind of martial arts technique. Perhaps only the imperial family owned such a high-level martial arts technique. Thus, Liu Yu Tong had broken through the day before yesterday. After breaking through, she had spent the last 2 days studying the secrets of the 4 seasons sword technique, and if there was anything she didn't understand, she would ask Ling Han. As a result, her power rose at an extremely quick pace. A gushing spring tier elite actually asked for guidance about martial arts technique from an element gathering tier martial artist. This seemed to be a preposterous thing, yet Liu Yu Tong and Li Si Chan both felt that this was very natural and there was nothing strange about it. Ling Han was too much of a monster. Had he been now able to use heaven-grade martial arts techniques, most likely the 2 girls would have only given an ah and then accept reality. Li Si Chan also managed to advance from the 3rd layer of element gathering tier to the 4th layer. Most alchemists were pill bottles, depending on alchemical pills to forcibly raise their cultivation levels, so naturally her body was highly immune to medicinal effects. Thankfully, her cultivation level was still low, so this immunity to medicines was not too strong. Thus, she also managed to advance to the next layer. Meanwhile, Ling Han broke through to the 6th layer of element gathering tier, and while his cultivation level was very low, his battle prowess was an extremely terrifying thing. 5 elements origin nuclei, 6 flashes of sword chi, indestructible heaven scroll, body of dead tree. All these added together would be enough to raise his attack power to 15 stars. While his defenses were even stronger, it would not be wrong to claim his defenses reached the level of 20 stars. It's still not enough. Ling Han shook his head. Only once he stepped into gushing spring tier would he be able to use black-grade high-level martial arts techniques. The power upgrade from black-grade martial arts techniques was not something that yellow-grade martial arts techniques could compare to. He was sitting on a mountain of treasures, yet he could only sigh. This feeling really displeased him. Liu Yu Tong only rolled her eyes at him. This guy was only in the second layer of body refining tier just over half a year ago, yet he had already broken through to the sixth layer of element gathering tier now, and he still thought that it was too slow. What about other normal martial artists then? They left their tents to meet with the others. Yi, Yutong, so you've already arrived. When a young man saw Liu Yutong, he immediately approached them. This man was Hu Bo. Watch my sword! When Liu Yutong saw him, she did not say anything else, but simply drew her sword and attacked him. That day, Hu Bo, in order to find her, went over to the Ling clan residence and made a huge commotion, killing and injuring a considerable number of people, which caused her to feel extremely guilty. Now that she had seen him, it was as if she had seen a mortal enemy. How could she hold herself back anymore? Naturally, from the first instant she saw him, she immediately began attacking him. What? When Liu Yutong attacked him, Hu Bo's expression immediately changed. Second layer of gushing spring tier, she had actually reached the second layer of gushing spring tier. Previously, when he had seen Liu Yutong in Gray Cloud Town, she had just broken through to gushing spring tier, and now it was only half a month later, and she had already reached the second layer of gushing spring tier. The word genius was no longer enough to describe her, right? She was like him who had also gotten the full support of his clan to develop his talent. But he was still in the peak period of the first layer of gushing spring tier. It would at least be another month before he would be able to break through, and his progress was already very much praised by his clan. And he was claimed to be an exceptional genius, yet when compared to Liu Yutong, he was an absolute idiot. Being under the fierce attacks of an elite of the second layer of gushing spring tier, how could Hu Bo dare to hesitate any further? He quickly drew his own sword. If he had any slightest bit of reservations at this moment, he was likely to be defeated. If he were defeated by a woman he was pursuing, how would he still have the face to see Liu Yutong in the future? Ding, 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 ding. The two long swords continued to clash with each other, creating fierce sparks of fire from the friction. Ordinarily, the second layer of gushing spring tier against the first layer would be a completely one-sided domination battle, but Liu Yutong had just broken through. Moreover, her breakthrough was successful because she had used alchemical pills, so her foundation was not yet strong enough, which naturally affected her battle prowess. And though Hu Bo had also reached his current cultivation level, with the help of alchemical pills, he had after all been stuck at the peak period of the first layer for quite some time, so naturally he had already solidified his foundation. Thus, the battle prowess these two could display was more or less equal, and it would be difficult to decide the victor of this battle in a short period of time. Yi, isn't this the pearl of the Liu clan? Why is she so strong? That's right, I remember that just barely half a year ago, she was still in the 8th layer of element gathering tier, and it should be at least another 2 years before she'd be able to break through to gushing spring tier. Yet she is now actually in the 2nd layer of gushing spring tier. This is practically unbelievable. This beautiful flower is really getting harder and harder to pluck. However, she is also becoming more and more desirable. Such talent. I have my eye on this woman. Nonsense. You think you're worthy of her? Those who were gathered were all embroiled in their discussions. They were all either from the imperial family or the 8 great clans, and all of their clans had power that was no weaker than the Liu clans. And since they were able to come here, this also meant that their power and talent were the best of the best. So naturally, all of them had their own pride. Liu Yutong had attacked for a very long time, yet did not manage to get the upper hand, so the flames of rage in her heart became stronger and stronger. She suddenly flicked her sword, and a powerful sword intent circulated through her sword, and her whole figure became extremely solemn. 4 seasoned sword techniques, a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. This sword technique was separated into 4 different parts, each representing spring, summer, autumn, and winter. In truth, it could be considered as 4 different sword techniques, which combined into a major sword technique. The best scenario was for 4 different people to use each sword technique at the same time, which will drastically increase the power. But it was not impossible for a single person to circulate this sword technique. This required the user to have a high control over their sword, one move following after another, spring followed by summer, autumn followed by winter, to form the cycle of the 4 seasons, which would also create a formidably powerful attack technique. Lu Yutong had only just learned a few moves of the spring rain sword technique, so naturally she was not able to form the cycle of seasons yet, which were the sword intents of spring rain, summer thunder, autumn wind, and winter snow. However, black-grade high-level martial arts techniques were still black-grade high-level martial arts techniques. Any single move would be enough to create a terrifying power. Shua, the light from the sword, was extremely cold, and there actually appeared droplets of rain dancing through the air that followed the sword as it moved. It was an impressive sight. The beauty was like a painting, and her sword was like the most beautiful scene, causing all the others to feel as if they had become drunk just from watching her dance. Even some of them who had determined to spend their whole lives on martial arts now could not help their hearts from wavering, getting drunk from watching Lu Yutong's beauty. The beauty was like jade, while her sword was like a rainbow, causing a lot of them to feel the urge to write a poem or sing a song in her honor. There was only one thing left to say. It was too beautiful. Translator, Dark Angel. Meanwhile, Hubo did not possess such a polished, graceful composure. On the contrary, he felt an overwhelming mountain of pressure bearing down upon him, and beads of icy sweat rolled without pause from his brow. Although Lu Yutong moved with the nimbleness of a celestial spirit, each motion heart-breakingly lovely, she was at once like a battle goddess descending upon the mortal world. The force she radiated tightened every one of his nerves until they sang. He nearly felt the urge to fling aside his sword and concede. But if he were to yield so easily beneath the gaze of so many, then upon returning he would surely be harshly reprimanded by the elders of his clan. He let out a thunderous shout, and his sword trembled in a rapid rhythm as he brought forth his strongest martial arts technique, Cloud-Slashing Sword. This was a secret art of the Hu clan, and likewise a black-grade martial arts technique, yet only a black-grade low-level martial arts technique. The Hu clan naturally also possessed black-grade mid-level martial arts techniques, but those were the core secret treasures of the Hu clan. How could a junior who had only just recently broken through the gushing spring tier be permitted to learn such techniques? If one wished to learn black-grade mid-level martial arts techniques, one had to be at least in spiritual ocean tier and prove one's loyalty to the clan beyond doubt, leaving no possibility of betrayal. Hong! The two once more collided, and at once the surroundings seemed to ignite, explosive, scorching, and fierce. Even several old monsters had emerged, smiling as they watched, hands clasped behind their backs. Though a battle of this level was in their eyes no more than a child's play, Lu Yutong and Hu Bo were both likely to reach their heights in the future, and thus their interest was naturally drawn. The Cloud-Slashing Sword technique was swift and ruthless. It was said it could cleave even the clouds drifting across the heavens into two, hence it was an exceedingly overbearing sword art. The Spring Rain Sword technique, however, was like a spring breeze turning into rain, silent and nourishing, moistening the earth without a sound, appearing tranquil and beautiful, an incomparably gentle technique. Yet then, why was the Spring Rain Sword technique a black-grade high-level martial arts technique? Though Spring Rain was soft, within that softness could also lurk killing intent. Shua, shua, shua! Countless droplets of rain whirled and danced in the air, and in truth transformed into countless tiny needles. As though sharp swords that had been shrunk countless times over, they pierced into the pores of Hubo's skin and ran straight into his veins. These droplets of rain were all formed by the Spring Rain Sword technique, each carrying Lu Yutong's own origin power. Once they entered Hubo's veins, they naturally possessed an immensely destructive effect. They had exchanged only 3 moves, and Hubo's battle prowess plunged drastically. He was completely suppressed by Lu Yutong. Under conditions where power was nearly equal on both sides, the one with the advantage in martial arts technique would naturally seize the upper hand. What more when a high-level martial arts technique was crushing a low-level martial arts technique? The gap between the two was not merely a little. Ling Han gave a faint nod. Yu Tong truly was quite gifted. She had already managed to seize hold of the concept behind the spring rain sword technique. Although this was in part due to his guidance, it also proved that Liu Yutong possessed remarkably high talent in the realm of martial arts. To be able to stir the spiritual chi of the surroundings and transform it into a real, solid assault, that was the greatest advantage of a black-grade martial arts technique. This can't be right. Even if Hubo can't be counted among the strongest elites of the younger generation in the Imperial City, he can certainly be placed within the third class and can definitely be named a well-known figure. How is it that he's already at such a disadvantage so quickly? It's not that Liu Yutong is that much stronger than him, but that her sword technique is far too frightening, using softness to counter strength. It's a profoundly mysterious sword art. And if it were me against her, unless my power was strong enough to utterly overwhelm her, I would absolutely be controlled by her because of this sword technique. Gods, what sword technique is that? The youths continued to argue and discuss among themselves, and more old monsters were drawn by the commotion here. Their eyes were fixed entirely upon Liu Yutong. The longer they watched, the more uneasy their expressions became, and the deeper the dread that gathered within them. To speak honestly, if they suppressed their power to roughly the same as Liu Yutong's current level, they would most likely only be able to force a tie before this sword technique, and that was still factoring in their abundant battle experience. How could this be possible? They all possessed their own black-grade mid-level martial arts technique and battle experience that exceeded Liu Yutong's by who knew how many times. Yet if they fought her on the same level, they could only manage a tie with Liu Yutong. Black-grade high-level martial arts technique. The old monsters exchanged looks, silently forming these 6 words with their mouths, before all turning their eyes toward the old monster of the Liu clan. They all only had black-grade mid-level martial arts techniques, so the 8 great clans maintained a delicate balance of power. Yet now the Liu clan possessed a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, which naturally meant that this delicate balance had been broken. Even though the old monster of the Liu clan stood in spiritual pedestal tier, he still broke into sweat when he abruptly became the focus of so many others of the same cultivation level. In his heart, he began to scold Liu Yutong. She had managed to learn such a terrifyingly powerful martial arts technique, yet did not keep it as a trump card, and instead displayed it before so many people. Wasn't that inviting others to covet this sword technique? He wished to claim that the Liu clan did not possess this sword technique, yet he also knew the other old monsters would not believe him. Since Liu Yutong knew this sword technique, wouldn't that be equivalent to the Liu clan knowing it as well? But at the same time, he was incomparably curious. Where had Liu Yutong learned this sword technique from? Liu Yutong let out a light shout, and as she wielded her sword, the spring rain sword technique grew more and more fluent. A martial arts technique, after all, existed to be used in battle, so only within true combat could she seize its essence. The more essence she grasped of the spring rain sword technique, the more she appeared light as a celestial being. In the eyes of the crowd, it was as though she were the fairy of the Jade Lake, dancing with graceful poise. As her sword moved, the spring rain droplets swirled and danced with her without end, weaving a beauty so breathtaking it could suffocate. All the young men present wore expressions of fascination. There were even quite a few who were no longer young, yet still felt their hearts waver as though they had returned to their youth, when they chased fine sights and sounds, horses and dogs. Enough! The old monster of the Hu clan spoke, extending a hand. His origin power turned into a gigantic palm that split Liu Yutong and Hubo apart. This is only a spar. Be careful not to go too far. Let us consider this a tie. Hearing those words, everyone else snorted with ridicule in their hearts. A tie? At most another 3 moves, and Hubo would certainly be miserably defeated. But who would dare argue back against a spiritual pedestal tier warrior in public? Unless someone felt they had lived long enough and wished to end their life early. Liu Yutong felt deep regret. She had not intended to defeat Hubo, but rather to teach him a lesson he would remember in his bones. Hubo stepped back, confusion written across his face. He did not understand how Liu Yutong had become so strong. And when he saw Liu Yutong retreat and stand beside Ling Han, a terrifying killing intent rose within his eyes. This brat was actually still clinging to Liu Yutong. How hateful! Damn it, the stronger Liu Yutong became, and the more frightening the martial talent she revealed, the more he desired to claim this genius girl for himself. Thus, he could not bear to see her standing so close to any man, and he was not alone. When the young men in the area saw this, they all turned unfriendly gazes toward Ling Han. Only now did they realize that beside Ling Han, there was not merely one beauty. There was another beauty at his side who was in no way inferior to Liu Yutong. Lai Shi-chan! Gods, the twin pearls of the imperial city, so renowned, had both become his women? Damn this bastard! And in this instant, Ling Han had become public enemy number one. Any among them who held even the slightest interest in Liu Yutong or Li Si-chan now regarded Ling Han as their rival. Moreover, the admirers of these two girls were enough to form a line that could circle the imperial city 3 times, so the number of new enemies Ling Han had gained could well be imagined. And this was only the younger generation of the 8 great clans in the imperial family. Brother Ling, I never thought you would arrive so early. The third imperial prince stepped out and offered Ling Han a friendly smile. He was a man destined for great things, so naturally he would not lose himself in the beauty of women. Hey! Ling Han laughed and said, "Can we set off now?" He had already waited quite a few days and could no longer endure the delay. He wished to uncover the secrets hidden at the source of the underground river.